Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live with me. Oh my goodness, I think this is the sixth live in 2 weeks. So if you need to catch up on those, check those out on my YouTube. And welcome everybody who's joining. As always, a huge thank you to my Patreons who you all keep me going. I really appreciate it. And I am gonna be seeing if Liker of Words is on. There she is. Hello!
Hi.
Oh, I need to turn the
I was
volume up.
just, I
There.
know, I need to turn you up too. Hold on. There we go. Hi.
Hi, I love, I've got this like red thing and you've got this blue thing, or I guess you're over here. Yeah. I was like, I like
I
the
do.
images.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
How are things out where you are?
Warm. Things are warm.
Okay, what is warm for
Um,
you?
I was just actually talking about this because I hopped on a little bit early. I really don't function well above 80 degrees, but for us, like, if it gets in the 90s, it's like extremely hot for where we're at.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So to me, it's warm. Is it
mm-hmm.
warm for everybody else? Probably not, but it's very warm for up here, especially at this time of year.
Okay, outside, because of the humidity, the heat index is about 110.
Yeah.
So, and here's the
No.
thing, I thrive in this. Like, I don't know what it is, but on days like today, I spent time outside. I was on my porch. I took like two different walks. Like, I will complain about the cold, but when it comes to the heat, I'm like, yep, I have awoken. This is it.
Oh, that's funny. I also I don't like it being super, super cold, but I'm pretty more, I mean, I've lived up here in the mountain town forever. So we get a lot of snow and we also have like this level of warmth.
Mhm.
So I'm good either way. Summer's my favorite though. And the lake is right there, which is what I'm going to go jump in after this because that's what's going on.
I'm
But
happy
it's not
for
very
you.
smoky today, which is a win. So I'm going to go with that.
Hmm. Oh my goodness. Great. You jump in that lake. I'm just happy for you. That just sounds so wonderful. We have the ocean out here, so I jump in the ocean at least once a week.
That's
So
perfect too. Go jump in water.
water
We
and
were just
pee.
Right. We were just talking about doing like planetary charity because it's a very fiery based week. The energy is really fire like. So, like going to the water, watering your plants, even just like pouring a little cup of water out into the soil just to like do some charity for that. Really good
Mm,
idea.
yeah, yeah. I'm curious if you felt this in the energy today because I understand that, for the new moon tonight, oh, thank you. Um, for the new moon tonight, it's good for manifesting. And I know in your videos you talked about manifesting something nice for yourself. Even if you don't know what to manifest, ask the universe, ask your guides, for a nice
Yep.
surprise or something like that. Though I'm all for that. Though for the friends that I've spoken with today, for some of my closer circle, all of them have had something like on a scale of not great to terrible happen, that all of the things had to do with shedding something. Like for some it was relationships, for some it was like medical things that needed to be removed. Yeah, like we're talking about like shedding.
Got it.
So it,
Hmm.
or like work related stuff or catching people, and I've just been like, okay, well, I hope the new moon has a point to all of that, and because I don't know, maybe it's just my circle right now. I don't know if you've been feeling that, but have you been like picking up on that, or other people
Yeah.
experiencing that?
Yeah. No, I've actually been picking up on that too, kind of significantly. And I think it has something to do with the fact Jupiter is stationing retrograde on Saturday. And we're kind of building up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just talking about this when I started too. It's like we're finally hit the top of a mountain, and then things are going to start rolling downhill. So it's like the final things that need to move in order. Oh, thank you. In order to move, are starting to come up, if that makes sense. So people are like all of a sudden burst shedding. Also, like, and I said this in one of my videos the other day. I was like, if you feel like you need to change your appearance out of nowhere, yes, like that's the other thing that's coming up a lot is like random, gonna go get a tattoo or gonna go to cut off all my hair, like those sort of things, just to like have things shift and move around. So yeah, I think that's exactly dead on.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been reading in my chat. Somebody shed a family. You know what? Sometimes sometimes those lines are good. I know that from personal experience. So I feel for you right now. Having been in a
Mhm.
situation, I don't know what your situation is, but I feel for you. And I
Yeah.
hope you manifest something great for yourself tonight because I know that was not easy. Um,
Yep.
yeah, some people
Someone
talk
just
about
said, I reorganized my cupboards. Does that count? Yes, it does. Your physical space is a representation a lot of times of your internal energy. And if you can't change like your physical appearance or something like that, changing your environment, same thing.
excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I think that's a good outlook for a lot of people. It seems like a lot of people are talking about dyeing their hair, highlights, haircuts. Yeah, just
Yep. Yep.
rearranging rooms and that kind of thing. Good for you. You know that's one of those things. You made a video recently. I just watched it today on. It's like 10 things. Put a finger down, and if you put
Hmm.
most of your fingers down or even like a few, I think it's like you're psychic. So all of
Yeah.
you who are leaning into this energy, congratulations. If you didn't know it, you're connected.
Yeah. You're
Behold,
already doing it.
doing the thing.
Yep. Doing the thing.
Oh
Very
my
much
god.
so. Also, if you're having communication issues, just in general, it lots of misunderstandings this week specifically. And I've been like kind of I feel like sometimes I take like a scientific approach to energy where I see a pattern, I'm like, huh, let's watch that and see what happens to like get the energy down. But
Mm-hmm.
that's been a huge one. And I'm not entirely sure the why of it yet, but like it is a lot of just people speaking their truth in the way that makes sense to them. And then someone responds also speaking their truth in a way that makes sense to them. And there's just a complete like, whoop, like totally missed the
Mm-hmm.
point. We get back around to it, I
Mm-hmm.
think, but there's been a lot of that. So if you've also had a lot of miscommunications this week, yeah.
Yeah. I think too something else that is leaning into that because I love the hat. It's so good.
I did too. That was great. Oh,
um, you've mentioned this before, and I know I've heard about it on your podcast, which Alchemist Inc. Wow, for anybody who doesn't already listen, I can't say that enough. Um,
thank you.
Mentioning how there was like an awakening of people acknowledging their either psychic or spiritual sides in 2020, and then we're now into that happening right now. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
if I'm understanding correctly, it's like if you had an awakening and then you kind of like tapered off, and now you can be getting back into that now, or if maybe
Yeah.
perhaps 2020 was not your year and then now you're leaning into it. Though all of
Mm-hmm.
that going back into relationships, it says to me when people start acknowledging their connection to themselves, their connection to spirit or what have you, suddenly there comes these things like self-worth and wanting perhaps more or wanting different. So when you
Yeah.
talk about these kinds of conversations, I feel like it could feel like that to some extent when even if you're talking to a longtime friend or a longtime partner, if they're not doing the things to advance that perhaps you are to be more true to yourself, then I could see how communication errors can happen because they're going to sit there and be like, oh, well, it's always been like this. Like, what is this about? Does that make sense to you?
Oh, totally. Absolutely. And when you evolve and the people around you have not gotten to the same level or same understanding that you're at just now, or they're on a different space, then it just doesn't hit necessarily because it's not authentic for them yet, even though if it's authentic for you. I guess it's a weird way of saying it, but that's how it came out. So here we are
Yeah.
um, with that. But yeah, it's actually to touch on that too. It is a huge. There was a lot of people that in 2020 during lockdown and stuff were very called to start opening up and exploring their spirituality, mostly because the noise stopped for a lot of people and they got to actually hear it and sit with themselves for the first time. And some people like, yay, and they threw themselves into it, and then lockdown moved and shifted, and so then it absolutely they kind of moved away from it or things, and now it's coming back up. So a lot of new people are awakening and a lot of people are reconnecting with their spirituality that they started diving into at kind of like the spring of 2020. And it's a really interesting energy to see come up, and a lot of people are starting to really feel aligned with doing it in like a more grounded, concrete, tangible way. And it's been very interesting.
And I think that is a perfect segue for what we talked about wanting to talk about tonight, which is
Yeah.
building a spiritual community. One of the things I noticed this, it was like some point last year, and I hadn't been doing like everyday consultation, well, not every day, but like ongoing consultations for that long. But one of the trends that kept coming up was people saying they felt like they were the only one in their town, or they felt
Hmm.
like it's like I'm the only witch in the village, or like I'm the only person who sees ghosts in my town, or I'm the only one who's not Christian. Um, all these
Yeah.
trends, and that it made me one look at my life and be like, okay, how did I find like-minded people, and how to grow that and share that community. So really, and I can answer that question, but first I would love to hear from you. Like what was it like, seeing what you see and experiencing what you experience, and not having a bunch of people around you, if anybody, having those experiences? How did you call people to you through that?
Such a beautiful question. First of all, I just want to empower everyone. Like everyone can call in their spiritual community. You can totally do that.
That's the point.
It's going to, yeah, you absolutely can ask for that to come. The first step is asking, though. If you're sitting there like, man, I don't have a spiritual community, and then you don't take it to, I'd like to, hey, I'd like my spiritual community to come to me now, and like stating that intention, it you're blocking yourself. You're not like coming in with like allowing yourself to state the intention of what you'd like. And that is oftentimes what a lot of people miss in so many different areas, but specifically when you're trying to establish a new community, or even like a new job, which is kind of a new community as well, of stating what you would like and how you would like that to feel. That is the other kind of bit of that, is I would say, is like sit in the feelings. What would it feel like to have a spiritual community around you, and how is that going to feel when they come?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then this is the scary part, and this is the part that always freaks people out. So, in my experience, so before I was a professional psychic and author like I am now, I worked in HR management. Um, and that is not a particularly spiritual place. And a lot of my community was really focused in that area. And when I left that job to go be a psychic, a lot of that community was like, whoa, okay. But not all of it, because I started talking about the fact that I was doing these things. It will astound you once you start mentioning what you can do, what you're interested in, the amount of people that are interested in it too, but are afraid to talk about it. Um, it's a one of those things that I think you probably have a similar experience, Rebekah, of like the amount of times I've mentioned like this is what I do, and I've felt tentative, and the person is like, "That's fascinating. I one time read this book, and I've always wanted to learn." Like, it grows so quickly once you start acknowledging that this is something you want and what you actually are interested in and what you like, because no one's going to find you if they don't know that you're into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know
Uh,
it's scary, and some people are like, okay, that's weird, and they move on. But the chances that people are hateful towards you, or judge you or whatever, are so much smaller than the chances of people actually being interested, or at least intrigued enough to ask a question.
mm-hmm. Something this happened when I was connecting with somebody's spirit guide, and it's a suggestion that I've just taken for myself as well, because I was like, that was a really good idea. Um,
I do that a
the
lot in readings. I'm like, wow, your guide was way more clear on this than mine was.
right, yeah.
Taking that.
Take mental note of like, remember this later. Um, what basically this person was in a place of change. They had changed their job. They had moved to a new town. They were really reestablishing or establishing themselves as somebody who they wanted to be, rather than someone that they were. And part of that
Mhm.
was acknowledging spirituality. And the guide suggested to basically ask people what they believe in, and have that be
Mhm.
the opening of a conversation. Especially for me, small talk is exhausting. So if I'm going to talk to somebody, I really want to ask them something that they feel really cool about, like something that is
Mhm.
inherently theirs, something that they find interesting. My partner often says, interested is interesting. So when you're interested in someone, they become interested in you. It's
It's a great
psychology.
saying, Jay.
Right? Yeah, Jay's on it. He's got that psychology stuff. But yeah, interested is interesting. It's great for meeting people, but it's something that I've adopted too. If I'm going to sit down with somebody, sometimes if I'm just feeling comfortable enough, I'll be like, what do you think is out there? Like, what,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not a, what religion are you? No, that's a, what do you believe in?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll sometimes look at like the stars and be like, what do you think's out there? And that way,
Right.
it's not me inflicting my opinions on someone. It's me basically seeing if they're comfortable talking about it and finding if we have, similarities. And sometimes we don't, and that's cool too. It's just a matter of respecting so long as, it's not going to be like morally dangerous or something like that.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say as far as, bringing your people to you, an affirmation that I adopted this past year is the best people are drawn to me. And I give that to all
Mm-hmm.
of you. And I also added the best people and beings because here we are. But
I get it.
yeah, like all the otherworldly stuff. Uh, but I say that before I meet somebody. Every single
Mm-hmm.
time I say that the best people, the best beings are drawn to me. And at first, when I first made the affirmation, I was like, there's, ego part of my brain. I was like, wow, the
Yeah.
best. But really, what that means is the best people for me, the best people that are going to help me grow. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to be great. It's just like, I want to be drawn to people just as they're drawn to me. So, yeah, you were talking about the, like, feeling like you're alone or even putting that out there of like, I'm the only one here. No one understands me. It's, flip that, the best people are drawn to me. There you go.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so empowering to like take back your own ability to realize like what you say you create and like take that energy back. That's a wonderful affirmation. I love that so much. And on that note too, go to places where people you would like to talk to are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I cannot recommend this enough. If you're getting into spirituality, go to bookstores. Go to bookstores. Period. There's people there that are interested in different ideas. There's people there that are like maybe diving into fantasy or whatever, or like maybe you'll find people in the spiritual, but just like it's a really wonderful place to be around people who are having kind of the same thoughts and ideas, etc. Outside things, going to things like outside events, hiking spaces or beaches or those places where people like to gather and like probably have ideas about the sentience of nature or those kind of things. Like go to places, libraries, yeah, all of those zones are wonderful for
Mm-hmm.
finding community in that space. And oh, I had something and now it's gone. I guess I wasn't supposed to say it. They took it. It was like whoop, gone. So here we are. I don't remember what it was at all, but that's okay. But yeah, go to those places too, and that's how you're gonna, call in, which is gonna be amazing.
Something as far as like going to places, I think travel, and I don't always mean like getting on a plane or getting on a populated thing. Like I especially right now with the pandemic, like do what makes you feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Healthy, safe. Um, there's something about travel though that I think is so aligned with having to trust your intuition because when you
Oh yeah.
don't know where you are, and if you don't know the language, if you don't have cell service, suddenly you have to trust something. You got to trust
Mm-hmm.
something. So, yeah, even if travel is just like get on the road and go somewhere, just see where you wind
Yeah.
up. It's a great way to trust your
Oh,
intuition, your guides.
they gave it back. They gave me my words back. Also, someone said
Perfect.
Emily will find her words a manifestation, and then it came back like right as I read that, which was really funny. So it worked. Good job, Blue Jay Way. Good job. Your manifestation worked. Basically, what I was going to say is the other thing you can do if you're kind of not really ready to openly talk about your beliefs with someone or something like that, you can do something very casual of like, wow, the energy of today feels really weird, right? And people usually get that because it's not like you're saying, hey, the ghost I talked to in that guy's house told me this thing. It's much calmer than that. It's much more toned down.
Mhm.
Or like, yeah, man, like last night I couldn't sleep at all. My dreams were really crazy. I was definitely getting like a lot of messages and guidance. Like those little things, people understand that language and will want to talk to you about it. It does open a door if you're not super comfortable about being like, this is what I believe about the universe, or this is what I'm experimenting with. Just start throwing in those kind of like language that is kind of everyday that has a very spiritual swing to it. And you'll get a really quick indicator of whether or not that person is going to be someone who understands or someone who just does not want to talk to you about that in the slightest. And that doesn't mean they can't be part of your community by all means. Like they still can if it feels aligned with you. But as far as like someone to talk about in like a spiritual community sense, that'll help. There we
Yeah,
go. They gave me the words back.
perfect. That reminds me of the medium v muggle or medium amongst muggle skits that I do.
Yes.
Most of the time, like it is a bit of an exaggeration. Instead of going into a conversation with like a random muggle and muggle, I like I don't start out with being like, wow, that creature on your back. One, I'm usually not that tuned in. I have to kind of sink and then like, be back in it in order if I'm going to see creatures on people's backs. And that's an example. Please, everybody, it's not that common. Please,
Really
heard a
not.
lot of
It's really, really not very common.
and you never know when that sometimes the creature can be a rando guide. I've also seen that too, where they're just like, I like to hang here. And I'm like, okay. So long as they're not taking energy and they give you good ideas. But here we are.
Yep.
Um, but usually when I start out the conversations, it's more like the end of the skit where what one was, I think the most recent one was the friend was like, oh yeah, the energy in my house. And then the medium is like, oh yeah, you should do a cleansing or something like that. And the friend is like, and then medium is like, oh, you should probably open some windows, move some air around. I usually start out the conversation with that.
And then follow it up later of like, yeah, and that's cleansing.
Or like, maybe go to the kitchen and make the meal that you love the most, and it always makes you feel good, and it makes the smell go around your house. Like cleansing, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I feel that a lot too. It's interesting too, because sometimes once people know my profession, they sometimes will be like, "What do you think about the energy in here?" And that's really cool because then you can just like
Mhm.
unmask the whole thing and be like, "Well, it's this, and this, and there's a guy over there, and also like these things are happening, and this is what's going on, and I can totally feel it and sense that." And then other times they're like, "Huh." So you think what's happening in the energy, and you totally know the difference immediately. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, it's just stagnant. It's just not moving. We should just move it around. Like we should turn
Mm-hmm.
on some music and dance and see if that helps. Because it definitely switches up.
I had something cool like that happen the other day. So I haven't been able to release these videos yet because I have to do a number of editing bits on them. But one of the historic homes that I haven't filmed at before, or at least inside in town, they had me go on a tour of theirs. It was, of course, history based, but beforehand they were like, "Yeah, if you want to walk around and talk to folks, we know it's haunted. We just don't know all the things, or we don't know what to believe." Um, After a while where they were kind of walking around with me and they started asking questions of the people that I was talking to, or the spirits that I was talking to, and then they started asking questions. Like I knew that the flip had switched when they were like, "Hey, so we've been trying to find records specifically of where this building was in what would now be considered the backyard. Do you remember where that building was?" And I was like, "Okay, now you're taking this seriously because
Yeah.
like
You're like,
and there was no harm in it too, which is what I love. Like it's kind of like they had these records but they couldn't find the foundation of this old building, and so they're like, well, we have nothing to lose, let's see if the medium can do the thing. And so I was like, hello.
mm-hmm,
So yeah, it's cool when that happens. It's cool when people who, I think skepticism can be very healthy, but it's certainly cool when they're just kind of like, well, we've been looking for this. What do you think?
mm-hmm. Yeah. And on that note too, if you're starting to go into your spiritual journey and people are saying, oh, like, why would you do that? Or, okay, you're just faking it, or whatever it is not your job to convince them. And that's like the biggest newbie mistake of starting your spiritual journey is you start your spiritual journey and you're like, this is what I'm going on and this is how strongly it means something to me. And people will be annoyed at you, or someone will say like, oh, whatever, or oh, sure, or even go as far as some like views in specific church circles of like what it is you're doing. The amount of times I've been called a devil worshiper is a lot. Um, and it's not my job to convince them. It's not your job to convince them. If it means something to you and they don't like it, then you can be like, oh, okay, cool, and just like move on. That is their own journey. You do not take to take that responsibility, and that is something that we feel like we have to, oftentimes because of limiting beliefs and blocks and stuff sitting in your space. And the second you go, actually, I'm not going to convince them. I'm just going to keep living my authentic truth. You remove that block for yourself, and you won't have to do it again. So I really want to make sure. Someone just said, how people will ask me, how do you know? Oh, thank you for the dancing cactus. So cute. Someone will, say how, like people will ask, how do you know? You can tell them. Sometimes the answer is, I just know, and be like, oh, I have a lot of evidence in my life that I use, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes they're genuinely asking because they're having questionings and doubts themselves and they want to know
Mhm.
your opinion. Sometimes it's not actually accusatory. You're trying to make you prove them to them. So just judge that sort of energy yourself with how it feels for you. And kind of go from there. But it's not your job. And you can just explain it authentically. You don't have to pretend to be anything you're not. You can be like, sometimes I know, sometimes I hope I know. And like go from there. And that's fine too. That's very
Yeah.
fine too.
Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
saying that. I've got a video that I've got to edit that's going to be coming out in like this week, next week, something like that. Time is weird. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I keep bringing it back to, and I've said this in lives a number of times, where our basis of spirituality is going to be based off of our personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has a personal experience. Even if their personal experience is leading them to be an atheist, that is their journey. And that's just as
Mm-hmm.
valid. Like, the amount of times, and I'm sure you've gotten this especially on TikTok too, but in general too, it's prove it to me. And I'm just like, there's no amount of proof that I can give you that's going to change your mind and change your experience. Only you will decide whether you believe this or not. There are people who look at facts every day and decide that that is not for them. So
Mm-hmm.
it just comes down to that. That's why I don't argue with people in my comments. I don't argue with people on lives. It's just not worth it. I'm not here to convince people. Really, I'm a storyteller, and I started on TikTok
Yep.
saying I'm a storyteller. And believe or don't believe, that's up to you. I'm going to live my truth. I hope, if nothing else, people are entertained. If anything happens to them later on and they look back and they're like, oh yeah, there was that girl that was something on that TikTok video or something, and that's what she did in that situation. Well, maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do what she did in this situation. Great. My job is
Yeah.
done. That's the best I can hope for. Somebody is
Mm-hmm.
less scared of something they run into later, and they are able to cope with
That'll
it
help.
rather than feeling like
Yeah.
they're alone.
Yeah. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. Also, it's really freeing when you're like, this is what I am. And that's just it. And that's just like the way that you put it out there. It's really freeing. So I completely just want to acknowledge that too. That I did a video a while back on this, and a couple people have asked about it too. And since it's kind of on topic, I'll touch on it. People ask a lot, like, what is my purpose? How do I live my purpose? You already are. So first step is acknowledging that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing as first step in opening up for psychic abilities, acknowledge that you have psychic abilities. First step in wanting to dive into spirituality, decide what feels fun to dive into and start reading about it. Like it's just that same sort of acknowledgement space of like allowing yourself to acknowledge your stuff. Also allowing yourself to change your mind. If you need to change your mind, that is also perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can do that too. But yeah, starting out, like, I agree. And also, you're an amazing storyteller. If you don't know Rebekah's stuff, go look at it. It's
So are
amazing.
you. You are
Yeah.
also
So
an amazing
you.
storyteller.
Um, but yeah, absolutely. Someone said Rebekah's TikToks are scary sometimes, but then freeing afterwards. Yeah.
I try to keep the scares to a minimum, but it is a part of what I do. I do go into some what some would consider scary situations. I'm not so scared of them anymore, and I share that with people. But yeah, I mean, I am a kind of liminal worker. Like that's what I do.
Hmm.
I do cleansings for people. I do talk to the creepy stuff sometimes, um,
Yeah.
and really my goal in it is to, most of the time I find out that the creepy stuff isn't inherently bad. They just sometimes don't stick to our morals and they look really creepy because they're not human, and that's okay. um,
Hmm.
there's stuff from all over the place, which, you know, we've talked about this before. um,
Yeah.
there was something I was going to say, but I feel like this is more important. Just wanted to give a shout out to my comment section right now. All of you are being so kind. They're like saying the kindest things about like us and
This
each
comment
other.
section too. Like, you guys are so sweet. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. Just really wonderful.
I remembered. Okay.
Okay.
So when you're talking about living your purpose and people who they're like, how
Yeah.
do I live my purpose? You say, you're already living your purpose. So for the folks out there who are like, what? I'm already living my purpose. I don't like where I'm at. Congratulations. You got that far.
Uh-huh.
Do like it's it's a weird line, and I feel like you're going to understand what I mean by this. Every so often, I will have a consultation with somebody, and I will connect with their guides, and I won't know the situation. I like to go in as blindly as possible and just be like, all right, can you just tell me what they need to know? And
Yeah.
the amount of times that the person will say, oh, I can't change my life. I have to keep doing this. I have to. And I'm like, your guides say you're choosing to, and they're like doing this.
Hmm.
So like, and I say this from experience because, and I've brought this up a number of times in the last week with like different people in my inner circles and like some random people too. When I say change it, that's not me saying that blindly. I've lived in so many places in the last 10 years because time after time I realized I wasn't happy for whatever reason. And so I chased happiness until I found it. Like,
Hmm.
I figured out where I wanted to live. I figured out when I wanted to move. I figured out new places I wanted to experience. And that's also who I am as a person. I've got a lot of air signs in my chart. So I'm just like, time to go to the next thing. Um, all the same, though, all of those experiences, even with running into homelessness, all of those experiences led me to where I am now. And now I know this is home. It took a led me to where I am now. And now I know this is home. It took a long time for me to figure that out. And it was a mental health journey and a spiritual health journey and a physical health journey. It was just a health journey. It was a lot of journey. Um, but
Like, it was just
that's,
a journey in general.
yeah, it's just a journey. I don't know why journey looks like this to me, but I guess it's, um, but yeah, I think for a lot of people, and this is where spiritual health, it's merged with mental health, but I always tell people in my consultations when it comes to, I can help with the spirit stuff. When it comes to things like therapy, I am not qualified. I will be like,
Yep.
please do that. But one thing that I can suggest with some people who believe they're so trapped in where they are and they're like, how is this my purpose? And the suggestion I get, can you change something? Just something small,
Hmm.
something in your day, something that might make you think you feel uncomfortable, but at least it switches enough to let you know you're not going to perish by doing that. Like, does all that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And when I say you're living your purpose, I don't mean like you've reached the pinnacle of your existence. It means that you're already taking the steps that are leading you forward towards more and more of who you are in your purpose and your expansion, which I think exactly is what you're saying is if you're feeling like, wait, I'm not living my purpose right now, you have the power to take even little steps. Even if you're like, I don't know how to change my life, start by doing something fun 1 hour a week. Even if it's just like reading a book, even if it has to come in 15-minute bursts over 4 days, that is totally, totally wonderfully fine. But that simple little thing will start moving energy that will give you more confidence to move, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, chasing that, it doesn't always feel aligned. So just start with little things. And again, you're here because you're at a really beautiful, wonderful time to be here, and that's really you deciding that and allowing yourself to just open more and more to that possibility and shift that energy. I fully agree. through all of the ups and downs of my journey, which is what I'm going to decide mine looks like instead of yours. Here we go.
Good.
Yeah, the second you're like, I am living my purpose, I'm moving towards my purpose, I'm going to continue to acknowledge my purpose on a daily basis, even if you don't know what it is. It's that fake it till you make it, but you're already making it, which is really beautiful.
I think.
One other
Oh,
thing, sorry, you guys are
yeah,
like poking at
I'm
my
holding
head
on.
and
I'm
won't
holding
let me not. Just to touch on spiritual community too, if you live in an area and you really don't feel comfortable, like there's really not a lot of people in your area that believe what you believe, whatever that is. That is the beauty of the internet. That's part of the reason you're probably incarnated in this time right now, so you can connect via the internet to people all over the world. A lot of my spiritual community, I have a good amount of it here. I do live in a very small town, though. A lot of my spiritual community is like Rebekah, who is literally across the country from me right now, and Crystal Lynn, who is also across the country from me right now. And I'm really good friends with people in Australia and Canada and those sorts of things, just because I started finding that community too. That is just as valid, and it's just as equal to share ideas and stuff in that way. So anyone who's sitting there and like, oh no, I can't do it with people in my town, that's totally fine. You can still decide that your community is coming to you and the best people for you are drawn to you, and that can be in an internet space too. Sorry, my guides really wanted me to say that. They like physically poked me, so here we are.
I'm really glad that they did, because I was actually going to bring up something that Krista Lynn said, I think, in the last episode of your podcast. Obviously, I listen to your. I just like run around and I'm like, if you're not listening to this podcast, do you know if you're having a good
Thank
week or
you.
not? Like, say that's a bit exaggerated.
I should hope so. My podcast does not dictate the type of week you're going to have.
For me, it's validation. It's more like when I also look at energy and stuff, I'm just like, oh, great, I'm not the only one. Good. And I feel a lot of people out there are like that too, or especially even if you listen to other episodes of the podcast, like after you've experienced it, sometimes it's nice to just look back and be like, whoa, I wasn't the only one. Great.
Yeah.
Something that Crystal Lynn
Big
said,
time.
though, yeah, was something I'm going to do with right now. We're living an adventure story. And when you're the hero in your own adventure story, it's hard because what adventure is normal, right? Like what adventure is the same thing every day. You're tested. You have to learn regularly. You have to grow and expand. You have to find your people. You have to find your ammo, if you will, or what will work for you, what will grow you and make you stronger. So that's the thing. Things are hard right now. The world is what it is. I do believe that we are here for a reason, and we are here to support each other, and that's the whole idea with exactly what you said. In having the internet, we're not on little islands. We have communication with one another, and honestly, I've been so fulfilled with the people that I've met really through TikTok that I've just been like, wow, okay, cool.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It's really miraculous. It's so neat, and I encourage everyone to lean into that energy because it's wow. It's very wow. So, also, the podcast is called The Alchemist Inkwell. We had like four people ask. Called The Alchemist Inkwell. We just released an episode today, all about the new moon that is tonight, and the very intense energy of this weekend is what I'm going to call it. It's intense.
I'm going to a conference this weekend, and now I don't know what to think.
It'll be a very transformative conference. It's going to be a very transformative conference. That's how I'm going to say that will be. That's the energy you need. It's transformation.
You know what? I'm just going to make that into an affirmation. As I'm walking around, I'm just going to be like, this is a transformative conference.
Yes, exactly.
I'll say it until I believe it. I'll consciously say it until my subconscious gets it in there. So,
yeah.
Oh, I wanted to ask, okay, because I've got some people still asking like how to find people, because I know for me, it's been one thing being on TikTok and meeting people, new people almost every day. That now after some consults, I will keep in touch with some people, or I will. Another thing that I do is when I find likeness between different people, I will bring them together and I'll be like, hey, you have this thing going on and you have this thing going on. And I know you two don't know each other, but there you go. And some really cool friendships have come from that. But for other people who perhaps don't meet new people almost every day, and perhaps you remember this when you were starting out, like when you were manifesting your people to come to you, like what did that look like? Like how did you find these people in different places?
That's a great question. First of all, starting conversation in places where I could, like that were aligned with me, especially talking about, again, the internet sort of spaces. Obviously, we've talked about how to find it physically a little bit. And by the way, everyone, Rebekah will post this to her YouTube. So if you missed some of the information, you can definitely watch it again. Um, but especially like in internet spaces, start conversations. So whether it's comment sections or lives or things like that, and then check out each other's pages, you can go that way. The other thing, and I can't stress this enough, is classes, digital classes, or like free workshops, those sorts of things where you get to have like a group experience. That is something that you want to learn. Now, I'm not saying believe everything you find in all of these classes. I am saying that it's a really cool place to meet people. So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily endorsing like I've taken so many courses for the purpose of meeting people and getting more expertise. So many, especially when I was starting out, especially when I was not yet confident to say of what I could do and those sorts of things, even though I was actively doing it. It going to those group spaces, those live workshop spaces, those kind of things where you can meet people from there. Absolutely a wonderful way of meeting aligned people, and going forward from that space. That was how I got my first group of like spiritual friends, was from a couple different classes that I took, and was like, hey, I'm starting this. At this point, I would say it was probably like a Discord server, but it was kind of like a Facebook group thing. And I was like, I'll just add people in that I like met from all these different places, and we'll just talk. And so that's a really great way of doing this. Um, and I've been, and again, this was like 11 years ago, 12 years ago at this point that I was doing that. So obviously the technological communication systems have changed, but the concept is still pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm. Something I would also suggest, because this is what I did before TikTok was a thing. Um, there are a few metaphysical shops in town, and I understand not everybody will have the metaphysical shop in town. It's especially if you're traveling, if you're going to be in a place for a little while, even just like a few days or something like that. Um, One of the cool things, and I also understand not every metaphysical shop is really into community. I'm very fortunate that we have some out here that are. They
Mm-hmm.
hold regular events. They hold regular festivals. Before pandemic, there was one gathering. It was called the Metaphysical Meetup, and every Wednesday you went, and they had tea that you could buy, and people would all bring their like stuff. Like people would bring in their favorite crystals, or they would bring in their favorite tarot cards or oracle cards, and everybody would just sit down and just talk to each other. And
Mm-hmm.
one, if anybody out there watching has a metaphysical shop, please do that. Please just have
Yeah.
open conversation. Not everybody is into the same practices, and that's
Mm-hmm.
entirely fine. So why not have these spaces where you can just be like, hey, it's Wednesday at 6. Everybody come by, bring your favorite whatever, and talk to somebody about it. So that's how I
Mm-hmm.
met people. And did I gel with everybody? Absolutely not.
Nope.
Be aware, there are spiritual people who you will not gel with for whatever reason. That is okay. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It just means you're not
Nope.
gelling with that person for whatever reason. But I met one of my best friends now, Sorsha, who I've had on the channel before, and we've talked about deities and that sort of thing. I remember she was like one of the first people that I was like, whoa, this is what it's like to know someone who sees how I see. And go
Mm-hmm.
figure, even just starting with one person, it made me understand what I wanted. It made me think of, okay, like she's awesome. Who else is out there who's like that, or even different from how I see things, but understands, and we can grow from one another. And it was from those kinds of conversations that now things are going and going and going. And that's what I want for everybody. Like I want you to
Yeah.
find your person, but it's doing different things. It like I remember that day it wasn't even a metaphysical meetup. I was just like randomly, oh, I'm gonna go in the shop because I am here eating food next door. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the important thing is those like gatherings and stuff, they don't typically cost money either. They're just like look out for those, like just free meetups. And it's you'll notice really quickly, like, wow, there's actually it'll be hit and miss. I'm gonna acknowledge that. There's some spiritual people that I do not jive with. Hard boundaries. Hard boundaries. And that's okay.
Mhm.
But there is really cool people there too, and that is a really wonderful way of meeting community. And you get to support your local community too, with like any sort of local shops or like get-togethers, stuff like that. Like just by showing up, you support. So you don't even have to spend any money. Just like existing there is super
Mhm.
powerful, and that's also going to call in a lot of energy to you.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be worth it, if you have, even if you have like a bookstore that seems open minded, maybe
Yeah.
their section on spirituality is wide and unique. Maybe ask them if they do something like that, a book
Mm-hmm.
club, or even just a kind of, hey, would you be open to having a kind of community night to open-minded spiritualists or open-minded practitioners or woo woo.
Yeah.
Like down here we
Woo
call it
woo
the woo woo. We're
people.
like, you're into the woo woo.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I've actually talked to my local like coffee and bookshop kind of about that sort of she approached me about it like literally yesterday actually, and she was like, we should do stuff, any stuff. What would you do? And I was like, well, we would just do an authentic like come in and bring your tarot cards, do a tarot card reading night. I mean, there's a million different things you can do, and usually like bookstores and stuff are always looking to be more involved in the community, and even your own library, like those sorts of places too are also typically like, oh yeah, that would be something that would bring people in, like sure, why not, like bring people in, let's do it. And you don't even have to really organize it, just be like, is that something you feel aligned with? I would attend and I'd invite people if that's something you want to do, and then they oftentimes will take that and run with it.
Yeah. Um, Something that I learned, I remember when I was establishing my first official LLC, but that
Mm-hmm.
was in DC and then turned into Raleigh. Wow, a different life ago, but really it was like 7 years ago. But I remember when I was reading about starting new businesses, and a lot of the advice out there was don't start a business if it's oversaturated, only start a business if you offer something unique or if you are offering to change something like the status quo. Now, the reason why I bring that up, which one, it is a kind of a limiting belief. If you want to start a business, just
I
start
was
the
just
business.
gonna say that is a limiting belief, like
Yeah,
really
yeah.
intensely. Holy moly!
The point of that really is, and I think I'm making a little leap here, but if you want to do something like start a community in your town, or if you want to start something new and you don't see that it's already being done, then it's up to you, adventurer. It is your chance. Like try it, talk to
Mm-hmm.
someone, be like, can we do this?
Yeah,
It may be filling a need that you didn't realize was there, and if no one else is doing it, the least you can do is try.
yeah. I fully agree with that. Also, and this kind of circles back to some questions that we've got in the chat, which I think is really cool, is um, if there's something about psychic stuff, spiritual stuff that seems fun for you to do, start. Oh, thank you for the butterflies. That was pretty. Start there. That is the place to start. Genuinely. The thing that you're pulled to because it seems like fun and you're excited about it, you're being pulled to it for a reason. Go that direction. At least start reading about it or diving in, watch some YouTube videos on it, or like whatever it is, let it speak to your heart because it already is, because it feels like fun. And that's
Mhm.
also going to be a really amazing way to call in community too, is because it feels like fun. So let it speak to your heart. And other people who are having it speak to your heart are going to naturally, energetically start coming out of the woodwork. I've seen it work hundreds and hundreds of times. But the second you start really investing some energy into things that are fun for you because they feel like fun for you and you want to read about them and you want to experience them and you want to grow from there, the more and more people will start coming to you that are also interested in those things.
Mhm.
And it's honestly that energy of fun, that joy, that excitement, that alignment just leads you down that path.
Mhm. Mhm. It's what you put out is what you wish to receive,
Yep.
and that can work a variety of ways. It can work for your favor or against your favor. So I'm always just like, it doesn't mean this is important. It doesn't mean be nice to everybody. It doesn't mean don't stand up for yourself. It's just a matter of to put out there. I want to meet the best people, or the best people are drawn to
Mm-hmm.
me. I
Yep.
I also want to be one of the best people to somebody else as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And yes, someone said, I feel like skating, does that count? Yeah, spiritual stuff is not, that's not the only thing. If you're feeling like being drawn to something because that feels like fun, start there. It'll change a lot of different things about your life very quickly. Very, very quickly.
You know, what's
Oh,
funny at these I remember at the metaphysical meetups, I've never gelled with tarot cards or oracle cards. Something about me and paper. It's just not, maybe one day,
no.
but right now I not a thing. But I would
Mm-hmm.
go to these meetups and I would just ask people, why does it work for you? And it wasn't like a accusatory thing, but I would just go to
Mm-hmm.
I would just be like, why does that, what do you feel drawn to it about? Can you explain it to me? I'd be that person at the meetup being like, I don't get it, but I really want to. And then they just sit down and be like, oh, well, this card means this and this card means this, and if you turn it upside down it means that. And I'm just like, awesome, that's really great for you. Thank you for your time.
Well, that's just it. It wasn't something for you. And that same goes with your psychic abilities, right? If you're like, ooh, I really, I feel super aligned with talking to ghosts like Rebekah does, or you're like, ooh, I super want to like do healing for people, someone who are really maybe really attracted to like Reiki or something like that. Like that is the same sort of thing. It's like, yeah, cards were obviously not for you. I know you use like rocks or something now, right? Because you just pull them. Totally works. That totally works. I used to use cards a lot. Now I basically only use cards for myself. And most of the time when I'm doing a reading for someone, it looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's what it looks like. But it
Mm-hmm.
works really well for me. Um, and those sort of things. And so I would also say, though, and this is just a quick ping for anyone who might have struggled with cards before, if you're struggling with tarot, try Oracle because Oracle doesn't have rules. And it might be that you're struggling with rules more than you're struggling with tarot. Just going to throw
And
that in there.
other suggestion, I'm curious what you feel about this, because this is kind of what I did. I don't just use rocks, I use a variety of like different metaphorical things. Like I even have jars of water from different places. Um, if you like the idea of cards, but you've yet to find a deck that works for you, you could use the concept of different cards or the concept of different oracle cards. Make your own. You
Yeah.
know that, like if you draw pictures or if you have pictures on the internet that you really enjoy and they mean something to you, print them out, make your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Could be a
totally.
cool creative
100%.
addition.
I used to do you can also, and this is kind of funny, you can use those filters on here that do different characters or different stuff, like what type of bagel are you? You know what I mean? Like those kind of things. Use that as like an oracle card situation. Whatever pops up, see what you can pick up from it. If that works well for you too. I used to do something called character oracle, where I would basically had like a deck of different like pictures of characters from different shows and animes and books and whatever, print it out and then like pull one of those and be like, oh, okay, that you're like this character. You're this character goes through this, and this, and that is how it's applying to your life there. And that is something like that character's journey. It makes it really easy to translate that energy into what someone's going through, including yourself. So that's another way of doing it. Again, that's not something that like you need to like don't make that and sell it. That's copyright. This is just for yourself. But very much so, like if you have a bunch of like make a deck of all your comfort characters, that's fine. And then when you pull one, you'll be like, oh, now I know what this is because I already understand this sort of thing. It's really it can be anything, genuinely. You don't have to follow what it should be. Shoulding on yourself, not great.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Um, Divination can be found in so many different ways. You know, it's funny because I was raised in a very conservative Southern Baptist world, and oftentimes they would talk about like how divination's bad, witchcraft is bad, and everything like that. And I'm not here to sit here and be like, oh, the Southern Baptist. I still have friends who are very open minded and they're lovely people. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
generalizing. The point of this is, I found it very funny. They were like, divination is bad, and then they were like, but if you need an answer and you go to the Bible and you like ask the Bible a question and then you open it until you feel where it's right and open it and then put your finger somewhere. And I, looking back on that now, I'm like, wait.
Divination. That's called bibliomancy.
And the reason why I bring it up is I think you could do that with anything. If you, I'm going out on a limb here, but I feel like, you know, if you have a favorite book and it just got you through something, and every now and
Yeah.
then you got to go back to that book, just to, reconnect with the feeling you had when you read it. You know what? Who's to say you can't do some divination with that and be like, I want to be a
Yeah.
hero today. What chapter do I go to? Just go from
No,
there.
that's literally a thing. It's literally called bibliomancy. It is actually a thing that you do with books. Like I have so many books here, and sometimes, like, for lack of a better one, since I have my Agrippina book here, I'll just be like, oh, what do I need? Validate my feelings. And that's like the extent of it. And I'll just be sitting here doing that. And that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
I usually have books stacked around me all the time, partly for that reason. Also, it's a comfort thing. It's fine. I just like other people's worlds near me constantly. And that is also, it's really helpful. Someone said Roman Catholicism is really funny with all of the rituals and stuff. Yes, I was very Catholic growing up. It's so pagan. It's so pagan. And that's
Well,
one of those things that, like, bibliomancy thing, the like amount of ritual in Roman Catholicism is like a
mm-hmm.
lot. It's really cool in some ways because a lot of people go from being Catholic to doing really ritual based magic because that was what they're introduced to, and that's totally wonderful too. But yeah, so to just touch on that, yes, divination can come in all sorts of ways.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I really enjoyed learning about the histories of different religions when I was in college. I was close to getting a minor in it, and then life. Um, though, when looking at the Roman Catholic Church and learning about the history of that, and all the things that were going on when that was being established, it's so fascinating because I talk with people of all different faiths and all different backgrounds and all different religions, and I always ask them, especially if they're going to do some kind of cleansing work or something like that, I'm just like, okay, first, what do you believe in? And whenever somebody says, well, I was raised Catholic, I kind of feel like that. And I'm just like, perfect. Okay, so you got incense, you got candles, you got all this stuff. I'm like, I get it.
You ring the bells. You understand transforming water into wine. We get it. Okay, cool. Like
Yep.
here we are. Oh no, it's super. Yeah, it's very accurate. That's funny. I was also initially drawn to like world religion stuff. Like I went to college for a very brief time for archaeology before life, and that was for that reason too, of that like very strong draw of like understanding ritual and understanding the like magnificence of that and those sort of things. And then obviously that sent me to this place. So here we are now. It's also been really interesting. So for those of you who don't know, I'm writing a historical fantasy. It's called Locusta. It's about a woman poisoner in ancient Rome. I'm getting close to being done with it, thank goodness. But it's been really interesting to see the other side of how like Christianity was established, because Nero, the emperor, and that was like the emperor at the time of like the crucifixion and things. And so seeing like the pagan side of like this invading sort of energy, it's just been really interesting. So I highly recommend researching the Julian Claudian period in ancient Rome if you want to see that other side, because it's really cool. And like hearing that from a woman's perspective, because I'm channeling the Custa the whole time. And yeah, so
Love it. Love it.
yeah. She turned off my TV the other day though, because I was watching an ancient Roman documentary and they were trying to be like Nero apologists. And she was like getting increasingly angry like the whole time. And you haven't had this experience like with your ghosts and your guides too, I know, where they're like, wait a second, that's wrong. Like, what is going on? And then like at the end, they were like, do you think we'll ever find evidence that Nero wasn't as bad as everyone said they were? And she turned it off. She was like, you don't get to answer that question, and just like turned it. And I was like, well, here we are.
I guess you're a part
That's
of the
how
way
guys and
the
ghosts can
opposite. Yeah.
affect energy. Like they can affect technology big time. So it happens.
Oh my goodness.
It was
Oh, I
great.
wanted to mention just as a last thing,
Hmm.
because we were talking about, going to the things that you're interested in. So for
Yeah.
anybody who is interested in spirits, especially of those who share our plane, so I'm talking about ghosts here. Um, if you're not already, see what's historical in town. See if you can be a volunteer. Um,
Hmm.
people
That
who
is
work.
such a good tip.
Yep, yep. You don't have to run in there being like, I'm here to learn about ghosts. I would recommend not doing that. I just
Okay.
recommend, yeah, go in there and be like, I care about history. And, every now and then I make sure that the trash is picked up. From that,
Hmm.
though, you're going to meet other people. And those other people are likely going to have, random stories of like, oh, did the door shut in your face again? That's so weird how that happens. I feel like somebody's angry, but nah, no way. I mean, you know what I mean? And that brings in the conversation of like, oh, why do you think they're angry? Like, who do you think it would be?
Mm-hmm.
It's a
No,
great way
that
to
is
learn
such
life.
a good tip. Yeah.
Plus, it gives back to the history as well. It
Mm-hmm.
preserves the history. It allows you to understand the difference between past and present. Though it also, you may find yourself in quiet rooms where you may be sharing space with spirits, and that's when you can be like, "Am I picking up on someone right now? What do I think
Mm-hmm.
I feel? Do I feel like they're male or female? Do I feel like they're young or old?" Ask yourself those questions. See what you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the flowers. I appreciate that. Yeah, I that is such a good idea. Some of the first time of like talking to ghosts concretely, because I talk to guides and stuff all the time since the time I was itty bitty. Then I shut it down because fear and whatever, and then I opened it back up. But like my first time talking to ghosts was because I volunteered at a very old children's museum, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, don't take the elevator," and I was like, "Oh, why? Why do we not take the elevator?" And it leads into so many different, the amount of people that actually do understand these things versus the amount of people that talk about understanding these things are two very, very different numbers. And you just need to be in the spaces where these things might happen if that really works. And that's a great way to call in spiritual community in an energetic sense, too. Of course, keep your boundaries. But there are definitely ghosts I go and visit around town because I know where they hang out. And whenever I go to that coffee shop or that rock over there, like we talk. And that's
Mm-hmm,
fine.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And remember,
And
too, your guides are always your community. You picked them, they're there for you. You have spirit guides. Ask them questions. The more you ask them questions, the more you're going to get answers. The more you ask for the help and allow the help in, the more you're going to get that help. Literally, the first step is asking. And if you're feeling like you can't connect with them and you're asking and asking and asking, just see if it feels authentic, if you have a block around actually receiving help and if you're allowed to receive help. And if you feel like, oh, that is blocked, I don't like when people help me, give yourself the permission to receive help. Literally just saying it out loud. Take some deep breaths into it, and that's really going to shift some stuff for you when it comes to that.
yes, and thank you for saying that.
Mhm.
So we're about at an hour. I want to be sure you get to go swimming. I think in conclusion with all of this,
Mhm.
when building community, it starts with I believe it starts with recognizing that you want them in the first place. You can
Mhm.
manifest your people. You can work with your guides to manifest your people,
Mhm.
trusting your intuition, seeing like where should I go today? Why just trying new
Mhm.
things. Go to the places that are interesting to you, and always keep an eye out, I think, for the potential of finding your right person. It doesn't mean let anybody step over you. It's just, if you're in a place that you really enjoy, who's to say that you're the only person there that really enjoys being there? And just look
Mhm.
around. That's what
Yeah.
I'm getting. Do you have any other things to add?
No, no, I was just going to do a shameless plug. Rebecca is awesome. Please go check out her stuff. Also, you can book consultations with her on her page. And yeah, go hang out with her. And she will be posting this video to YouTube, so you can watch it again later as well if you missed part of it. But yeah, I mean, lean into the places where community is available and state your intention that tonight is a new moon. Manifestations start with intention, and whether that's intending for yourself to find new community or have a wonderful, happy surprise happen for you this weekend, or to get a new job, or for the business thing that you just started to work out well, whatever it is, state it present tense with a deadline as an intention, and it really, really helps. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to be
Uh,
my plug for that.
And I will plug you as well because I know that you have a variety of options, classes that you
Thank you.
offer. And I know for
Yeah.
the Forgotten Storytellers, that's a community that I have now. That's something that you helped to build for that. So if any of you don't follow Emily, I know what you need to be doing in like 2 minutes. You need to go over and follow. And of course,
Thank
you're the
you.
podcast that I've said a bunch of times as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like on our channels, it's like, look, if you're gonna like me, you're gonna like Emily, vice versa.
Yeah, I feel like and we share each other's stuff all the time too. It's like, look at that, do that thing.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you as a person. You're such a wonderful friend. Talk about finding community. We literally found each other on here, and we text all the time now. I love Rebecca. So here we are.
Well, the feeling is
Yeah.
mutual.
Thank you. Yeah, and if any of you are struggling to open your psychic abilities, there's a lot of questions in here. I talk about it extensively on my page. Rebecca talks about it on her page. I do have like multiple courses about how to do that too. That'll help you with that because there's a lot of that energy there too. So I just wanted to. A lot of people ask that question, so like, there's resources, I promise. And yeah, we'll I'm sure come live again sometime soon to chat more. But thank
Yes.
you all for being here and joining us tonight.
All right. Well, thank you, and thanks everybody for your kindness in the comments as always. It's so
Yeah.
appreciated. Yeah,
So
make
wonderful.
make great intentions for yourself tonight. You deserve it.
Yeah, and just relax, have fun, do something fun, and that calls in the fun. It works well. Um, Bye.
Bye.